The Gurubashi War, 18 years before the Dark Portal. None of the Gurubashi who had witnessed Warlord Joknan's death survived, but it took little imagination for the trolls to guess who was responsible. The Gurubashi came together under a banner of the slain warlord's son, Zanon, and marched to war against Stormwind. It had been centuries since the Gurubashi tribes had fought as one, and the humans were utterly unprepared for their fury. The trolls' numbers were frightening. Within days, Stormwind's southern defensive lines crumbled before the Gurubashi onslaught, and the civilians who could not escape were butchered in horrifying ways, their teeth, bones, and ears taken as trophies. The Gurubashi's objective was clear: burn Stormwind City to the ground. King Barathon recalled all forces to the stronghold's gates. His kingdom's survival would depend upon one colossal battle. As the Gurubashi warbands approached, Lane told his father what he and his friends had done in Stranglethorn. Barathon was more disappointed than angry at his son. He did not punish the 3 young men. There was no need. The trolls would see to that soon enough. When the Gurubashi arrived at the city walls, the soldiers of Stormwind trembled at the trolls' numbers. Zanon had learned some of his father's forbidden tricks. He'd used them to transform a few Gurubashi into hulking berserkers, possessed of otherworldly strength. These mutated giants climbed Stormwind's walls and proceeded to rip its soldiers to pieces. The death toll on both sides mounted quickly. King Barathon knew that it would take a miracle to break the Gurubashi's siege. So the old leader mounted a desperate counterattack with his personal guards. He stormed directly into the hellish front lines, seeking Zanon's head. He almost succeeded, but the odds were against him. King Barathon died on the field of battle. Lane mourned his father's death, overcome with guilt about the foolish mission into Stranglethorn. Yet, he knew that the city was now looking to him for guidance. Stormwind's forces had fallen into disarray. All seemed lost. Lane pleaded with Medivh to unleash his power as he had done before, believing it was the only way to spare the city. Medivh agreed. The thought of calling on his full might frightened him, but, in a strange way, it also excited him. He stood upon Stormwind City's ramparts and rained fire and ice upon the Gurubashi. He froze them in their tracks. He incinerated them from within. He blasted them to pieces with pure arcane force. Their screams of pain drowned out the sound of the battle. Medivh soon realized that he was making sure their deaths were excruciating. He was even more horrified to discover that he enjoyed it. When Medivh called off his arcane barrage, Stormwind City still stood. The Gurubashi and their leader were dead. Only a handful of trolls had escaped the maelstrom of magic. The people of Stormwind mourned their dead and lauded their horses. Medivh was seen as the realm's greatest defender. The kingdom welcomed Lane Rin as its new ruler, and Anduin Lothar was raised as one of the military's top commanders. There was nothing but approval from the citizens. The secret mission that had sparked the war was not known to the public, but the consequences of it weighed heavily upon Medivh and his friends. Many innocents had died due to their recklessness. Medivh understood that he did not have the will, the mental fortitude, to control his guardian birthright. The woman in his dreams continued beckoning him to Kherson in order to refine his powers. He now obeyed her. He was too terrified of what he might do if he didn't. The Guardian's Burden. When Medivh arrived at the Tower of Karazhan, the woman in his dream was waiting for him. It was Awen, the mother he had never known, and she was furious. He had taken too long to answer her call, and he had nearly destroyed a kingdom for it. Medivh accepted Aegwyn's ire. He was in no position to disagree with her. For over a year, mother and son made up for the time they'd been apart. Aegwyn took this opportunity to teach Medivh what it meant to be a true guardian. Her first lesson was to convince him of the need of secrecy. He could not trust anyone, particularly the Council of Tirisfal. The Secret Order's original purpose had been to safeguard Azeroth against the Legion and empower a Guardian to confront demons directly. Over the centuries, its focus had drifted. The Council now seemed more concerned with self-perpetuation than with Azeroth's preservation. The Council also loathed Egwene. It had given her the power of the Guardian. She had refused to give it back and instead had passed it on to her son. Egwene knew that the Council would eventually learn that Medivh now held her power. Its members would undoubtedly be suspicious of him, the first person to receive such power without their permission. One of Egwene's closest friends, Moros, agreed to stay with Medivh and help maintain the Tower of Karazhan. Apart from interacting with his caretaker, she strongly urged her son to distance himself from the outside world. Other sorceresses would not understand his burden. In her view, not even the Kirin Tor, the Mogulkrats of Dalaran, would have any knowledge that he needed. Medivh told his mother about the strange darkness that seemed to dwell within him. It had shown itself multiple times now, and he was afraid. Egwene dismissed his concerns. She had felt the same thing during her tenure as Guardian. She had come to believe it was simply the burden of power and the weight of responsibility. She did not know the truth, that Sargeras' dark presence had influenced her mind and was now twisting Medivh's thoughts. Egwene eventually returned to her exile. It was difficult to part from her son, but she knew the Council of Tirisfal would never leave Medivh alone if the Magi believed she was still at his side. Medivh retreated into the libraries of Karazhan and immersed himself in study. The responsibilities of a Guardian were many, the techniques unlimited. He tried to make up for lost time as best he could. As Egwene had suspected, the Council of Tirisfal discovered that Medivh was the new Guardian. The Order had heard of the mage's exploits in Stormwind. After some investigation, they had tracked him to Karazhan. By this time, the Council had abandoned any thoughts of creating a second Guardian. Egwene's rebellion had taught them that they could not control such an individual, no matter how hard they tried. The Council also knew that trying to force its control over Medivh might only anger him, as it had his mother. The Council sent missives to Karazhan, politely asking Medivh for a meeting. He never replied. The Council then tried something else. They convinced various mage orders and schools to send young magi to study under Medivh. None of these aspiring apprentices would know that their new mentor was the Guardian. Medivh was not a friendly mentor, and none of these first would-be students stayed for longer than a day. He felt the darkness within him growing, and he thought his isolation was the cause. Moros understood. He had always disapproved of the way Egwene insisted on detaching herself from the world. He suggested that, if Medivh could not trust the Kirin Tor or the Council of Tirisfal, he could invite people from surrounding regions for a banquet instead. Surely they would not have ulterior motives other than curiosity, and the company would do him good. Medivh allowed it. There was a great feast, and the guests were awed by the wonders of the enchanted tower. A grand time was had by all, and their happiness even lifted the Guardian's mood. In the years that followed, Karazhan would host many more galas. Nobles from around Stormwind would come to regard Medivh's parties as exclusive high society events. The Council of Tirisfal snuck a few agents into these festivities, but the Magi were thoroughly confused by what their spies reported. By all accounts, Medivh was using his power and prominence to live a shallow life of luxury. It was not what they had expected from the son of Egwene. More potential apprentices showed up on Medivh's doorstep. He no longer made it a point to drive them away, but he accepted nothing less than excellence from them. If they had a single mistake, Medivh dismissed them. Few of these trainees remained in the tower for more than a week. Medivh was no longer alone, but his inner darkness soon engulfed every corner of his soul. Any fleeting moments of happiness seemed to disappear beneath the weight of crushing depression.